Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Absolute Game of Nerds with your non-geek, non-nerd hosts, JP and Rohan. Today we're going to give our review of the Ant-Man movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantamania. The movie just came out a couple days ago, but by the time you all see this, it'll be a few weeks old. So this is going to be our thoughts on the movie, if we liked it or not, and our thoughts as to what happens with the comic books related to these movies and the future of the Marvel universe, based on everything that happened in the show. So by the time you're watching this, you would have seen it. You had 2 weeks, so this is a spoiler-filled review.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get into a quick discussion here. Rohan has some updates or some thoughts on coverless comics, right?
Oh, yeah. I just had a cool little tidbit that I learned today. It's kind of been the most recent episode that we dropped. Obviously, it'll be a few episodes back, but we did a interview with Jason from Omega Collects, and he talked about his pursuit of a Batman one, and he was talking about how he'd even get a coverless Batman one. And then I was talking to Errol yesterday, and he's who he had the Superman one, and he's now chasing a Action one. Action Comics one on Comic Link, that is a coverless book as well. And it's really time to think about like how often we see coverless comics, and I'm always like, how is this? Who is just ripping off the cover? Why are they ripping off the cover? I always wondered like, how is this so common? Like I see it fairly often relative to what it is. And so I was actually watching today, this morning on my drive in, I was watching the latest video from Mike from Lunch Money Comics. And he, did one of his things at some like flea market or somewhere. He picked up a box and had a bunch of coverless books in it. And he started talking about coverless books. And he said, back in the day, I guess when you used to buy comic books, the ones you didn't sell, like if you're a shop or whatever, the ones you didn't sell, you could return to the distributor and they'd refund you the money for those comics. But I guess I think he said maybe shipping got too expensive or something like that. But what you could do is rip off the cover of the comic and then like show that like on a photo, I guess, to the distributor, and then get your refund that way. Obviously, then a bunch of people still took those coverless comics and sold them. So he said he wasn't 100% sure about that, but he said that's where he got the thought that like that's why there are a lot of coverless comics, because of that concept. So it's just kind of funny how like I think about something and all of a sudden it just like randomly pops up and I learn about it. So I thought it was a cool little fact to share on the episode, since we are a comic book podcast.
Yeah, no, I watched that same podcast. I didn't finish it yet, but I saw
Yeah,
that
it's toward the end.
but he had a cover of X-Men 1,
Mhm.
1991.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So he had that cover, but then he had a bunch of non-covers. And I've seen at flea markets for good money coverless. It was a Fantastic Four number 49, so the first Galactus, and they wanted $250 for that book, coverless. Right? I think that's probably what a good price would be for that. So depending on if you're a collector and you want that first page because it's Wolverine on 181 or it's Action Comics, I think it can have some value and look neat in a slab. But you got it. Like I look at piles of old comics to find a gem. I'm not paying $250 for someone who already found it and put it in a But that's what they're trying to do. They found the gem, they put it in a flea market or in an antique and looking to get some money for it. So
Well, yeah, and now too, like you hear people talk often now because you could buy a page from Action One or a page from Batman One, and they'll sell for a few $1,000s. And so there's this people have been talking about more like are there people actually shredding up some of these Grail books that are in poor grade condition and then selling the individual pages, which I understand from a profiteering standpoint, but like I go, that's a travesty. I don't care what condition. If you have a Batman one, you don't tear it apart.
Well, there's some cards that are being made that have pieces from.
Yeah, I actually do. Those cards are cool. They're called. I've seen a bunch
of money.
I've seen a bunch of Spider-Man ones, and those are pretty rad. Now, if a book is already like shredded up, and you happen to come across a page here and there, and then you cut the page up, that I get, and I'm fine with that. But like, if you have a complete book and you tear it up because it's a low grade book, thinking you're going to make more money, I mean, you may make more money. I just think that's a travesty. Like that'd be a shame.
Yeah.
Like I would take any of those books, Batman 1, A of 15, right? If you found it and it's a fucking 0.5, still better than not having it.
Yeah, you can always get like a loot crate or a facsimile put that cover over top of the original and send it in. I think you can and get it graded, and it'll say that, you know.
I think when you do, because I looked at the coverless one that Errol is bidding on, and it gets a not grade. Like I think because I think because essentially the majority of your grade is the front and back cover.
Right.
And if you don't have the front and back cover, all they can grade is page quality, and they may say like off white to white or whatever it is, but otherwise they don't give it a grade. So,
it depends on the front page.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's true. But the one he was looking at had a facsimile cover, and it was definitely an NG.
Yeah, but would you? That's the question. Would you want to get that graded and slabbed? I think it would look cool, but what's the difference of just buying a loot crate or a facsimile and getting that graded? Because
I mean, if I was to buy a coverless grail, I'd just keep it coverless. Like, because usually, like,
and maybe just slab it coverless and have it might be better than
that's what I'm saying. Slab it coverless, because like oftentimes like the splash page could be cool, right? Or whatever it is on the page can be pretty cool in itself, and it's like still the book, and at least I could see like the original material. Whereas if I had a facsimile cover on it, I wouldn't see the original kind of thing. Like, so.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it's a different type. I don't like them if they're gonna take a good book, rip it apart. But a low grade, or you find a couple pages here and there. But in order for somebody like Topps or whoever's making these cards to make a good amount of them, they didn't just find one page and made a whole card out of it. They did it on purpose. So they're ripping apart a book most likely. So
the cards are cool, but man, that's a travesty.
Yeah, I mean, if I find them, like there was a trunk at this antique store north of me that had a bunch of coverless books, and I found a Spider-Man 120, so that's the Spider-Man versus Hulk, and I found Dracula #3, and I found pieces of the cover, not enough to make a full cover, but you know, at least I had the story in there, right? But you know, I got them for $1 a piece, and what are they worth? I don't know. So I'm looking for like Amazing Fantasy 15 or you know Action 1 or something could be in that pile. You never know. So
you never know.
Never
know until you look. The more you look, the more likely you'll find too.
That's right.
Yeah. Anyways, let's talk about
speaking
Antman
of small things, right?
Yeah, exactly. Good transition. Why don't you just give me your overall general critique before we get into the details?
Okay, so I did a review on this on the Absolute Geek podcast Friday, so that would be 2 weeks old by the time we're seeing this, and I think I gave it an 8 out of 10, and I'm going to scale that back to a 7. Because there's only so many Marvel movies that are 8, 9, and 10s out of 10. But this was a good, fun movie to watch. And it had great implications for the MCU moving forward. So that's why I liked it. I left Thor Love and Thunder disappointed for many reasons. I didn't leave the theater for this movie at all disappointed. I actually enjoyed it. So,
yeah, I thought that too. I just thought in general, it was a very fun movie. First and foremost, just like I enjoyed my time in the theater. Not once did I think like, man, how much time has gone by, and I was just like enjoying every bit of it. I too kind of was in the same boat. Like I was like, I give this 8 out of 10. But then when you kind of think about it, okay, if we have to rate this against all MCU movies, you know, 10 out of 10 would be like your Endgame and such. And so it's like with that in mind, I kind of bump it back down to a 7 out of 10, which I think is great. Mostly what I loved about it was that Phase 4 gave us so much blah that like it never really moved the MCU forward in really any capacity. Like Thor Love and Thunder, for example, like what did that do for anything else? Like, I mean, I guess gave us a post-credit scene of Hercules, but like other than that, like nothing changed. Status quo still status quo. And so we're still kind of in limbo. And now finally we got some movement forward. We've been hearing about Kang, and Kang was awesome. I mean, like, I don't think I've read one review where people were like, let's all be clear here. Jonathan Majors stole the show. That dude is straight up talented, man. And like for a character like Kang, and you think about like all the variations of Kang that he's going to be playing, like he seems like they really hit it out of the park with their selection of him to do that.
Yeah, no, I thought he did a great job.
Yeah,
with it, and thinking back to Multiverse of Madness, that one really did help move the needle at the end credit scene. But the movie itself was fun to watch and see that scene with all the Illuminati, but given they all died, it didn't really help move that part of it forward until the end of the movie, and then you saw them go into go into a vortex or something, I guess, go into another universe. So this movie was a fun Ant-Man movie, a great introduction of a villain who will be around for a while, and moving the needle forward, but more on the lines of the villain itself.
Yeah.
And then the post-credit scene, like the Ant-Man movie itself, if they could have put any villain in there, it wouldn't have been as good of a movie, obviously, but they could have had a villain in the multiverse, in the quantum realm.
Yeah, just some
and
monster of some kind.
and then brought the Kang piece in at the end, and it would have been just like Multiverse of Madness, a fun movie and no real implications until the post-credit scenes. But
Yeah, I
seeing
mean,
how Kang is pretty cool.
I agree, right? Like when I think about like Phase 4, the three best movies. I mean, Spider-Man: No Way Home was excellent, right? It was so good. However, all it really did was kind of introduce us to the multiverse, right? It didn't really do anything else in terms of the greater picture. Multiverse of Madness was fun. I wouldn't say it's as good as like No Way Home, but that kind of further like gave us an idea of like what the multiverse is, what its capabilities are, and then Black Panther: Wakanda Forever I also liked, but when I look back at it, like I just watched it because it is now on Disney Plus, and it's still a good movie, but it's just like when you think about it, like it really was more about memorializing Chadwick, and and it did a great job of that, and like it did introduce Namor to us, but it really again didn't really push the needle forward. It would have maybe if we got like a Doctor Doom hint, like a lot of people had theorized, but it didn't do that. Whereas like this is like we know Kang was coming, and I also too wasn't 100% sure going into this movie. Like I know MODOK was going to be involved, and they kept saying MODOK is a villain as well, and Kang was a villain. I was originally under the impression that it was going to be MODOK as the main villain, and then maybe he like worked for Kang, but you really wouldn't see much Kang in this movie. And then at the end, you'd get some big kind of Kang implications, and then that would push off. Versus this was fully a Kang movie, and MODOK was kind of more of just like a comic relief to Kang.
Yeah, he looked terrible.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to MODOK, my honest opinions were just like, honestly, I don't really care because MODOK is not like a character I cared about. Like I don't know much about MODOK. He's kind of a kooky character to begin with. Like I heard some people say, oh, in the comic books, especially because the MODOK stands for machine only designed only for killing, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so people were like, the comics MODOK is, completely homicidal and blah, 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 blah. So they kind of took that and then made it more of a comedic character. And I was just like, I just don't care about MODOK. So as long as he didn't ruin the movie, it wasn't going to be something that was like, oh my God, I can't believe they messed up MODOK.
Well, like knowing who MODOK was and how he's supposed to look, they nailed the look from the comics. Okay.
Yeah.
But whenever he would open up the mask and you see his face, they just made his face look really stretched.
Yeah.
And I thought they could have just made his face look normal but big in that mask, and I'd have been like okay with that. But they really like messed up his. And again, maybe that happened because got sucked into the quantum realm, hence why his appendages were all small. But overall,
I did laugh when Ant-Man was like, "Oh, I just noticed your little legs."
Yeah, Paul Rudd's good in just about anything he's in, and MODOK was the comic relief. Paul Rudd did a good job of being that overall relief in the movie.
I did have a quick laugh. So in a few weeks, we're going to have an interview with Phil from One True Last Nerd King. Him and Rage Theo have a podcast that they just started, and on Saturday they did a lot. They do them like live, and they talked about Ant-Man, and that they did their review of Ant-Man, and I can't remember. They had a couple other guests on the show, like Comic Con was actually on this episode. I can't remember who said this, but they were like, big surprise of them all. MODOK was actually played by Kevin Hart, and I thought that was so funny. That just made me laugh really good. And I was just thinking of like Kevin Hart as MODOK was really making me laugh.
That would have been funny actually to do that way. I just saw a picture of I think it was Shaquille O'Neal, Yao Ming, and Kevin Hart.
Oh,
and I swear they superimposed.
Nice.
They superimposed Kevin Hart because he didn't look right in the picture, even though he is. It was probably spot on size wise, but it didn't look right. So
I will tell you as a quick aside, if you ever want to watch something funny, so as we've discussed in our origin episode, like I own a CrossFit style gym. just Google on YouTube Kevin Hart does CrossFit, and it's him and Kevin Hart and Conan O'Brien do CrossFit. Oh my god, it's so funny. It is so funny.
Yeah, those two guys together.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin Hart's he's built, so he looks like he works out. Conan O'Brien, no.
No, dude, and that's why it's so funny, like to see Conan. Like Conan is not but Conan is also a very tall, big
He's
guy,
huge.
especially compared to Kevin Hart. So like to see them two, it's so good. Like trust me, look it up. It's so funny.
That's hilarious. I'll look that one up.
Anyways, back to Ant-Man. What are the thoughts? So you predicted the Micronauts, and I learned afterwards, and I texted you about this, that the characters in the quantum realm are the Micronauts. However,
It went down.
Hasbro owns the actual IP of the Micronauts, and hence Marvel cannot use the term Micronauts in the movie, and hence why they were called Quantum Beings or Quantum Maniacs or whatever they called them.
They probably could have used the term micro nuts for MODOK, but they couldn't use Micronauts. So I didn't realize that. Again, I didn't buy the book. I bought the book when I saw it, and I didn't spend a ton for it, but who knows if it'll... It doesn't look like anybody from the quantum realm is going to make it out to be anything substantial. So,
and I'm okay with that.
No, I'm not.
Aside from your future fortunes.
I know. Jesus, everything just falling apart with that stuff.
Yeah, first Lobo, and now the Micronauts. It's all
Lobo's coming. I'm telling you, it's coming. But
Booster Gold, baby.
He's coming too, and that one's for sure. And I think that's going to catch on pretty good. Lobo, we'll see how that one turns out, but he's definitely... Lobo's coming. I'd almost bet I almost bet this Micronauts that Lobo's coming.
Yeah, I will say, I just don't think like this. Before the movie, you and I talked about like critics were pretty much slamming the movie, and I listened to some reviews, and I just like the things that they talked about of why they slammed it. I just like honestly, I didn't really care because I'm like, this isn't Shawshank Redemption. Like I don't need all these like character, like I don't know. I just thought it was a fun movie, and so like that's all I cared about. Like I enjoyed it. It gave me a good jump off and taste for what's to come, and that's why I liked it.
Yeah, no, I didn't like how MODOK looked, which we just talked about. I didn't like the fact that, Janet was okay with Ant-Man going into the quantum realm to get that quantum energy to fix Ghost, or she fixed Ghost, and then they went back to get more quantum energy, and that's how he got stuck. And I think the difference of where he was and where she was there was a vortex, and then there's the quantum realm itself. So there's different parts of the quantum realm, and that's where Paul Rudd was stuck in, and that's why when he came out, he aged differently, and that's how, for him, it was only 5 minutes, from what I gather, from what I recall, right? But for Janet, it was 30 years.
Yeah.
And she, ended up dating Bill Murray in those 30 years, and I guess Kang too. So she didn't wait for Hank to come back.
Yeah.
She wasted no time there. But she had, the 30 years in there with all that stuff that happened, and she mentioned none of that in the end of Ant-Man 2, and when she, when they, sort of, when she was back in it at the end of Ant-Man 2, and then all of a sudden she was like, I can't tell you this, and kept being so secretive. Just tell them, get it out.
I would say when they were like flying in that like kind of spaceship thing, and she was like, they were like, tell us, and she's like, I can't right now. We have to do, and it's like, no, you're all flying together. This is the perfect time to tell them while you're flying. Like you have time to. I heard one other criticism that I did think was valid, and I will say though, even though I think it's valid, in the end, it didn't take away from the movie for me, and it was Drew from Como Comic Books. He also has a podcast, and he did his review, and he said the visual scenery was legitimately stolen from Star Wars, and I was like, huh? And then I thought about it, and then he started going into it, and I was like, oh, because he was like that scene when they're all at the bar in the quantum realm, and Bill Murray's there. He's like, that's the bar in Tatooine, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty good.
Eisley, yeah.
That's right. And then he's like, and then you see Kang's army assembling and coming out, and he's like, that's the clone armies that you see in Star Wars, all coming into formation. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a good point too. And then he's like, and then that final battle scene where they called in everyone from the quantum realm to attack Chronopolis. He's like, that was the battle scene at the not the Ewoks, the battle scene in episode 9 where they like called out everyone in the universe to come to, what was it called, Exegol, to
Oh yeah.
attack the Emperor. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right too. So I was like, okay, that is a valid criticism. Again, though, in the end, like it was like whatever. It was still a fun movie, so I am fine with that.
No, and I enjoyed this movie than I did episode 9 of Star Wars.
Oh
So
yeah, 100% on that, no doubt.
so, but I did see that. I heard some talk about this movie being similar to Tron, Tron Legacy, some of the backgrounds and whatnot. I mean, they could have. It, it seemed like everybody that, and I've heard this on a few other casts as well, but everybody that they needed to know was all in the same town. As big as this quantum realm was supposed to be, everybody
Yeah.
knew who Janet was. So that part of it was kind of like, all right, must be the subset of that. Or there's a movie where I can't remember the name of it. Maybe you will, but essentially a guy gets trapped in time or something, but he can't ever leave where he's at. He basically, the distance keeps getting further from where he goes. He could keep walking and never get anywhere. So he's like, where he is where he is. He can't get any further. So I wonder if that's what quantum realm is. You can't go much further than that particular bubble, and then there's another bubble. Who knows? This movie could blow your mind if you went stoned or on any type of medications. You could blow your mind because you could go way far into this movie and the implications. And I've heard people have different opinions of what will happen with the Kangs, and it could spin your mind.
Yeah, I was just real quick, since you talked about like how everyone that needed to be there was in the same town. Like I felt that very same way when I first watched the Mandalorian show on Disney. Like I don't know if you remember the opening episode, but he's literally like, Mandalorians are a lost race of people, and we're trying to find it. And then he like walks down the block. It's like, oh, here's the Mandalorian hideout. This is amazing. And it's just like, are you kidding me? Like we're that lazy? Come on.
Good point. Yeah.
Anyways, back to the movie. What do you think of the post-credit scene, specifically the one with the various Kangs?
All right, so I knew who two of them were. I figured out who the third one is after doing some research and watching to a couple reviews myself. So it was Immortus, Rama-Tut, and Scarlet.
Those were the two obvious ones, and
Scarlet
then
Centurion.
Yeah, and I thought it was. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I did not like the way they did Immortus with the voice, the raspy voice. I don't know if I could listen to him for a whole movie with a raspy voice, because it's just my own pet peeve that bothers me.
Yeah, I was gonna say I like. I thought using them was like a real treat for like long-time comic book fans. Because you think about like all the people that watch MCU movies, like there's so many people that watch it now that have no idea of the history or of the comic books that they're based on and things like that. And so like Rama-Tut and Immortus like came out in the Silver Age. And it's like you have to be a fan of comic books to know that those two variants are a thing, let alone any of the other variants. Right. And so like I feel like that's something that like an MCU movie could to potentially like not use, because like, well, we got to play to our bigger general audience. So I thought that was a real cool like kind of like, oh, it's like, hey, this is Immortus, this is Rama-Tut, and like you hardcore comic book fans are going to know who this is.
Yeah, that's why the third one was harder to figure out.
Yeah, Scarlet Centurion. I didn't know who that one was.
And he's supposed to be red from when I looked at the pictures of him. So why they made him more silver is beyond me. And I wonder if it's Nathaniel Richards, because he's supposed to be the first Kang that came back.
Well, no, they're all Nathaniel Richards,
right? But he came back. He's the one from 3,000 years in the future, the year 3000. He found time travel and came back. Yeah, and another one came back to be Rama-Tut and all. I mean, you can go all kind of different places. Like Kang could always be the villain in every movie going forward. Well,
yeah, and like again, we keep bringing up another. Did you watch the Emergency Awesome breakdown? Do you watch him at all?
Mm-mm.
So he's a guy I like, and he does all things kind of nerd related. So there's Marvel, there's Game of Thrones, there's all the various fantasy things like that. If they have media content in terms of movies or shows, he does like breakdowns and trailer breakdowns and things like that. So and he does a very thorough job. And on this, he was explaining like he went through like where Rama-Tut came from, where Immortus came from, and then he even went through Scarlet Centurion, and then he even pointed out a couple other Kangs in the crowd. And like, I mean, yeah, it's like they use variants in the comics of Kang all the way up through modern comic books. Like, and so like like you said, like Kang can essentially be a villain in every movie. And so it was also cool to think like I knew the movie Avengers 5, I guess it will be Kang Dynasty. And I just thought that name was just because Kang was going to be the main villain. And now I think when you see that like post credit end scene, you now see that the dynasty is actually that they're going to be fighting all the Kangs.
Well,
and I didn't realize that.
Avengers 267 is the first appearance of the Council of Kangs.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a book I had. I think I got traded it recently, but
that's the one with like Kang on the cover like this or something, right?
Yep. And then there's another that run from 267 to 270 has a lot of Kang implications that I think will be used in this storyline somehow. But that Council Kangs, everybody in that arena, there's really 3 Kangs that are supposed to run everything. Probably 4, because if you look back to Loki and you saw 3 statues and 1 was knocked down, right?
Wasn't he isn't the Kang that's in this movie the 4th, right? So you have
correct.
Yeah, and so the other 3 exiled him, and so yeah, he would have been the 4th.
Right. So he was the 4th, but so my thought is somebody said that it was the Kang the Conqueror from this movie is also He Who Remains.
I know. I think He Who Remains is another variant. So He Who Remains.
What they're saying is that it will just come around full circle because He Who Remains is the one trying to firm up the timeline, and the other Kangs are the ones running the multiverse.
Yeah.
So why they put him in the quantum realm was because if they kill him, they'll know he'll come back around and become He Who Remains. This is a thought. So they had to exile him so he doesn't get in their way while they run the multiverse. The other 3 Kangs.
Okay.
So a couple thoughts here is one, now that they said he's dead.
Do you think he's dead?
I don't think he's dead, but
yeah, I don't think so
I wonder if they mean He Who Remains is dead. And I think whenever He Who Remains died, that's where their post-credit scene starts, because that's when the timeline started to branch off, right? And I think the Kang in this movie from Quantumania is going to be the Beyonder, because he went beyond the quantum realm, right? And when he comes out, he'll be the Beyonder, part of the Secret Wars.
Yeah, I've heard that definitely. Like the Beyonder is a version of Kang. I've heard that, but even before the movie,
I don't think it was in the comics that way, was it?
No. I think the Beyonder is a completely separate entity.
Right.
But I think I remember reading like on one of those rumor feeds that you have on Instagram that was like Kang will be a version that is the Beyonder for then the Secret Wars.
Right, because you can make him anybody, which is the cool and the shitty part about Kang is that you can go and retcon anybody to say, like, to retcon Ramatut to be Kang, to retcon Immortus. It's like just have separate characters, and it can go way down a rabbit hole with Kang. That's the difficult part. So that's my thought, is that whenever Loki killed, or what's her name, the girl from Loki,
Sylvie,
when she killed him, I think it branched everything off, and that's what brought those 3 Kangs out. Because they don't want anything to do with the TVA. They want to use the timelines, and now that he's dead, they can do what they want. And they might have banished the other one, and at the same time, he got banished to the quantum realm, met with Janet, and then he got shoved back into the Beyond verse, we'll call it, and he'll come back out in probably Secret Wars, is my thought. So you'll see this Council of Kangs in that Kang Dynasty, those 3 and a bunch more. But I believe the big reveal would be the Beyonder being this Kang from this movie.
Guys, JP's going deep on this stuff, man. He's about to write a doctoral dissertation on this.
So that's my I had my prediction about the Micronauts that went down the hill, down the turlet there. So this one will probably go the same way as that prediction.
I mean, neither of my predictions were right. Paul Rudd didn't die, and we didn't get any Fantastic Four hints or Fantastic Four cameos or anything like that. I will say something that maybe I thought about was, so in the upcoming Fantastic Four movie, everyone expects it's not going to be Doctor Doom as the main villain of the Fantastic Four movie. Doctor Doom will be a bigger villain on a larger scope. And part of that reason is like the 2 failed Fantastic Four movies, like they did Doctor Doom, so they want to do something different. So then the rumor came out that Annihilus was the planned villain for the Fantastic Four movie. So what I was wondering is like, because Annihilus comes from the negative zone, and like to me, it just seems like we already have the quantum realm. They probably don't want to confuse people then with the negative zone. I wouldn't be surprised if they like just combined the two and like the negative zone is the quantum zone or quantum realm in the MCU, and if Annihilus is like one of those characters, one of those quantum beings that after Kang was defeated and then Ant-Man and Wasp and all them left, Annihilus then is one of those characters that raised himself to power, and
Oh yeah.
you know what I mean. Like it's not like they're gonna install democracy in the quantum realm. I'm assuming, right? I'm assuming like someone's gonna be like take power by force because there's an opportunity because Kang the Conqueror is gone, and I imagine that, and I predict. So I was thinking that would be then Annihilus.
Right. I also heard Galactus for the Fantastic Four movie, but we'll see. That I think that'd be you could do the Nihilist from the negative zone.
Yeah.
Combined.
I mean, I obviously would love Galactus as well. I think like a lot of people talk about like Galactus would be another great overarching villain like Thanos, and I actually think Galactus is better off as a one solo movie where they do the trilogy story, the FF 48, 49, 50 as a movie, or a couple movies. And then from there, I think Galactus is better used as like someone that makes cameos in other movies because they're in search of some ancient knowledge or cosmic power, and they have to go to Galactus to get this. Versus like him having a slew of a phase, I guess, or a saga in the MCU on it.
Yeah, I can't really think of a storyline that involved Galactus that was overarching.
Yeah,
The Secret Wars, they did that twice. Two different versions of it, so they're gonna, speaking on this particular phase, Secret Wars is going to be the main Avengers level movie, and the Kang Dynasty that will tie into whatever Secret Wars comes about. So you think through Beyonder and Doom, which I was hoping both of them would show up. Now, what did Galactus? Was he part of any big storyline? So, it's hard to think that far out. But what's the next storyline after Secret Wars, right? So,
yeah. I don't know.
I
think he's definitely got some roles in some of the new modern stuff, but I don't read modern, so I couldn't.
I couldn't tell you on the modern stuff. I knew Secret Wars and Infinity Wars, and those are the two they did, and it's kind of like shoot, take your best shot first, and worry about the rest down the road. So, Infinity Gauntlet was such a big storyline when we collected. At least that's how I remember it. They did it first. Secret Wars was more of a play on the toys from '84.
Yeah.
They wanted to build toys out of them, but the 2015 storyline was way more involved and way of a cooler story. And so we'll see how they mold or merge those two. But I think the overall, obviously, incursions that are brought in, timelines. I mean, that's all.
So you've read the 2015 Secret Wars?
Again, I don't read books from. I want to read it. I have.
You looked at the pictures.
I look at the pictures. I have the trade paperback of the original Secret Wars, and I have all the issues of the recent Secret Wars, and I was going to read them one of these days.
I should just look them up digitally and read those because I don't know anything about the 2015 Secret Wars.
It's all incursions. It's way of a heavy storyline.
And I hear like Doom is like a central character in that. So that brings in Doom.
So the first Secret Wars was the Beyonder, and you never really saw him. You just saw his voice in the original.
He didn't make his actual I remember his first appearance is in the Secret Wars 2 storylines.
Yeah, so all you do is see him. Secret Wars 1 is the first appearance of him, but it's a cameo.
Yeah,
and the first mention of him, and he's the bad guy throughout the whole thing. And you get it was really a way to make money from Marvel, right? They tried to find two words that would help sell books, Secret and Wars, and then they made toys out of them and brought all the characters together, and they fought each other. And really, what happened? Nothing really had any consequences from what I recall. Now, someone might tell me different.
Well,
except for the symbiote.
It's funny since you say that. So over the weekend after I watched the movie, one of my other brothers who I talk MCU with, he like texted me. He's like, "Man, it made me watch." I had totally forgotten about this. In Spider-Man the Animated Show, in the last season, season 5, they did 3 episodes of Secret Wars. He's like, "Man, I watched them." He's like, "They're really good." Still, and I was like, "Oh, I should." I had some time to kill, and they're like 20-minute episodes, so like you can watch all 3 in about an hour. And so I did, and like it was great. I mean, like it's a little bit of a twist on the comic book Secret Wars, but like it was enjoyable to watch. So if you want to check that out, and you have Disney Plus, you should check that out. It's like season 5. I don't know. I can't remember the episode number. If you look at the titles, though, you'll see it says Secret Wars on it. Though it's like towards the end of the season. So.
Yeah, no, it was a. I mean, it's iconic of a storyline, but the implications.
Yeah.
Besides the black suit, were the only thing that came out of that, from what I recall.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I was just going to say, in the animated series, Spider-Man animated series, at the end, after the Secret War was over, the Beyonders like, okay, now you all get to go back, and you're all going to have no recollection of what happened, right? So that kind of goes into what we were just saying.
Yeah. And again, it was a fun little series, a way to sell toys. The 2015 one's way deeper, and again, I don't read modern books. I don't read older books either, but the 2015 one I think had more of an effect on the storylines going forward. And
everyone that talks says that they predict the 2015 will have a more
because there's no incursion talk in the original one. So with incursions and multiverse, this was just the original one from '84 was everyone got sucked to a battle world to fight good versus evil for the Beyonders' enjoyment.
Yeah.
And then he went away, and then he came back in Secret Wars 2. It looked like Elvis or something with his hair and the white.
That's what he looks like in the Spider-Man animated show. He doesn't have white hair, but it's black hair. But it's like
he has a white suit on or something, like 70s.
He has like a metallic 70s. He looks like he'd be like Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin on stage, kind of thing.
Or he's on Saturday Night Fever or something like that. It was quite the look. So, I mean, we'll see. I doubt that version's coming. And Doom was the Beyonder. There was the Beyonders in the 2015 run, and then Doom became God Emperor Doom for whatever multiverse was left or whatever universe was left. Because in the beginning of the books, the last two universes collide, and like the Fantastic Four is trying to save. I think Sue Storm dies in the beginning. Somebody big dies in the beginning because he couldn't get to her right away. Almost reminds me of Star Trek when Spock went back to Vulcan when the planet was blowing up.
I don't watch Star Trek, so you're on your own here.
Okay, so when I forget which number it was, but Star Trek, the one that J.J. Abrams did, and it was also had Chris Hemsworth in it in the beginning. So anyway, so somebody's destroying I forget what the race is because I'm not a Star Trek fan. I watch them, but I'm not a huge fan. So one of not the Vulcans, but the other alien race is trying to kill the Vulcans, and it's not the Jesus Christ, forget about it.
I was gonna say Kree, but that's Marvel.
No, it's not the man. There's the people have their own language and people speak all the time. Forget the name of it, but anyway, so Spock's mother he's going back to save his mother, and he goes to grab her, right? And they're teleporting them back to the ship as the planet's imploding, and he has her, and then she slips, and he gets teleported away before he can grab hold of her. So just that gut-wrenching, that he almost had her. And this beginning of Secret Wars it's drawn, so it doesn't have the same effect that the emotions would be in the movie. But I think it's Reed Richards trying to get Sue Storm or somebody big name. I got to read it again, but like she's taken away just like that. The universe implodes and he's pulled away, and it's like it could be really big of a story and really like Tony Stark dying at the end, like having a big emotional movie. So I think that'd be the route to go.
What I just thought of. So I just kind of gave you that spiel on like Annihilus and how maybe he's the one that takes over after King is gone. But I just thinking. So what they've come out and said, at least I'm pretty sure it's been confirmed, that the Fantastic Four movie is not going to be an origin movie, so we don't need to think about that. But it is going to take place in the 60s. And I don't know if that means that there's going to be Fantastic Four that goes back in time to the 60s or just the movie starts in the 60s. I don't know. But maybe because Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man, that's kind of, he was younger then. So maybe, back in the day before Scott Lang, he was messing around in the quantum realm, and then Annihilus came out. Because maybe he was like the top dog in the quantum realm before Kang and all these other characters, let's just say. And then he's now unleashed on the world in the 60s, and then the Fantastic Four have to defeat him. Maybe that's where Annihilus comes in. So that's kind of another thought.
kind of thought they were going to make the movie based in the 60s and then have them like go, something happens and they go into the future, right? So
Yeah,
they're
that's what I'm saying. Maybe like the movie itself and their battle versus the Nihilist takes place in the 60s, right?
okay.
Right, and then maybe somewhere down the line in the MCU, like with Secret Wars, for instance, like they're gonna pull all these characters, and maybe they're like, and I also gonna pull the Fantastic Four from this time, and that's how they become forward, and everyone's now on the same timeline. Maybe that's
Could be. I'm kind of curious how they're going to put all that together because that's
yeah,
no one's talked about. You had some mutant talk now in She-Hulk and some other places,
yeah,
so you can. But where were they? Where were they? For
yeah.
the
And I
rest
mean
of these
that's why they also
movies.
talk about like Deadpool 3 is going to be apparently like a major implication MCU movie where it sets everything up for the big movies. Is what I'm
That's,
reading. So, and I have no idea how they're going to do this Deadpool 3 movie. I know Wolverine's in it. Now it comes out that Ian McKellen is going to reprise his role as Magneto. That probably means Patrick Stewart's going to reprise
yep.
his role as Xavier. Um, and so it's just like I really have no idea where this Deadpool 3 movie is going to go.
Yeah, I can't see any real Deadpool movie is supposed to be a fun ride, right?
Yeah.
Like an Ant-Man movie, and neither of those any of those movies didn't have any implications except for enjoyment. And so to make Deadpool such a monumental, not monumental, but a big bridge into the future of the MCU,
Yeah.
interesting touch.
Was it on Absolute Geek that you guys talked about how maybe it'll be like Wolverine and Deadpool are like after they kind of battle for a little bit, they become like Bill and Ted and they kind of go through the history of MCU
That's what
movies.
somebody said.
Yeah, I mean,
I
that is
think Lance
honestly
said
like
that
kind of a funny concept.
because I heard it'd be like a buddy cop movie, like
Yeah.
Riggs and Murtaugh, and then I heard that it would be Bill and Ted's where they're going all through time. But Deadpool did that at the end of Deadpool 2, and it was fun how they're gonna kill Hitler. He killed himself for being the Green Lantern and killed that Weapon X that was in the Wolverine Origins back in the early 2000s. So that was a more fun fly through the time
I
stream
actually
there.
forgot about that part.
Yeah, but it's not. I don't see that, but I guess they're going to make it more of a serious note to go, make implications. So I'm thinking that back to the Fantastic Four, they're going to be propelled forward to come into the timeline so they can explain why they haven't been talked about. Because even if Hank Pym, that they glossed over that too. Tony Stark, his dad knew Captain America, but there was no talk of Tony Stark knowing Captain America until they met each other in Avengers, right? But
No,
his dad,
he knew of Captain
they
America
never talked about that.
because by then Captain America was frozen, right? And so he had heard of Captain America, but he didn't actually meet him until he was
Till
unfrozen.
Avengers, but there was no back talk of, oh, my dad when he met
Yeah.
Captain America. No talk of my dad make just shield for you or whatever else that I
No, there was
remember.
in Civil War.
Correct, but it wasn't in Avengers, right? So they didn't retcon to that beginning.
Yeah.
So where was Hank Pym? Never talked about knowing Tony Stark and all working together at that
Yeah.
plant, the military plant. So let's say the Fantastic Four was there also,
Yeah.
and they were there, but let's just make them a bunch of Air Force pilots that somehow got shot into the wrong dimension, but nobody knows they did. Their plane looked like it blew up. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's always tragic when that happens to pilots or to any soldiers and whatnot. But you really don't know their names because it's sort of covered up. So if they perished or they thought they perished on some project, that's why Hank Pym wouldn't bring them up, nor would Tony Stark or Tony Stark's dad. So they would have been unknown.
Yeah.
But when they got
I mean, Ben Grimm is a pilot, right? Like he's the one that flies the spaceship in the comic. He's the one that flies out into space when the cosmic rays affect him. So you could make some play like you said, what you said happened, that accident sent them wherever, and that gave them their powers. And so now they can be pulled in. And then that also makes sense then if they get taken from the past, pulled forward, then they obviously missed like the whole Thanos and the blip and all that.
Right.
So I mean,
and
yeah, they're tying this together in ways that we haven't seen yet. And that's why it would be super fun to me, I should say. It would be super fun to like be in the room as like the roadmap is being.
oh yeah,
You know what I mean? Like be one of these architects of like, okay, let's flesh out the ideas for the next 10 years, whatever. Like that would be a fun gig to just be like, okay, we go here, then we can do this, and that would be awesome.
And that's what this has got to be all mapped out. The first go around in phase 1 was not mapped out.
Yeah.
And hence why there was some loose ends as to why Captain America didn't mention, or Tony Stark didn't mention knowing of him from his dad until Civil War. So, now you can you got to retcon and try to fit those other pieces back in without messing it up, or just go straight off to like multiverse. The Fox universe gets brought in, and that's why the Fantastic Four's here, which I think would be a lame way to do it. I think it's cooler to try to find an opening in an older timeline to bring them in that way.
I agree.
Than to just say, "Oh, here they came in."
It's funny that you brought that up, how the MCU wasn't as planned out at the beginning. I had actually totally forgot about that. And then I listened to a podcast with Geekable, who's another guy actually we're going to have in a couple weeks. And they were talking about the DC news, and they were talking about how after the Gunn announcement, James Gunn has said that the current DC new universe, the next 8 to 10 years, is more planned out than when Marvel started. And but they talked about how I totally forgot Kevin Feige wasn't the man at the beginning. It was that Avi Arad or whatever his name is, and it wasn't as put together. But like they obviously did such a good job once they tied it all together with the Infinity Saga that you just forgot about that. But he was totally right. Like it was Avi Arad. I can't remember where Kevin Feige came in and got installed in place of him because there was some drama. Who knows? But that I was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about all that.
I think he was on X-Men, or did some of those movies for X-Men when Fox did them. As I think he was part of those movies. I have to go back and watch.
Feige was.
Oh,
okay.
But then you always see Louis D'Esposito and Feige were always the names I saw on early Marvel movies going, this is the same guys over and over again. So because I was used to Fox and Sony just taking these names and doing their own thing with it, whereas this became consistent by Captain America.
Yeah.
So, they may have started with Iron Man to see where it goes, and there was an end credit scene on Iron Man whenever
Iron Man, it was wasn't it General Ross coming to Iron Man and be like, I'm thinking about putting together a team?
It was Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh, was that okay? Yeah, okay.
So,
because then in Hulk, Iron Man in the post-credit scene comes to Thunderbolt Ross and says like, we're putting together a team. We need that guy on our team or something like that.
Yeah. So they even had something planned out, some facet of it.
Yeah.
And whatever you can make it so broad with Samuel L. Jackson coming in, it could have been the Avengers team and just having an Avengers movie, right? It didn't have to be Thanos level.
Yeah.
So, or Infinity Gauntlet level. So again, you can start to put a little bit of, many times, how many movies have you watched where you see options for second and third movies and they never go that route because the movie just didn't make enough money to push that forward. Yeah. So Iron Man did, and they were able to keep going and said, all right, well, now that we laid a couple little breadcrumbs, we can take it and actually make something out of this. Whereas they have so many ways they can go now. But you kind of, when you do 33 movies, they go find an opening to retcon some stuff back in. May be difficult, but I think that's the cooler mark than just saying, oh, look, the multiverse brought everybody in. It's like saying your favorite character died, but it was a dream. Oh, that's an easy way to make that. That whole movie, that whole TV series, that whole last episode was a dream. Great, thank you. All that drama, and it was a dream, right? So let's not make this a dream. Let's make it all fit as good as we can. So
I think pulling them forward, I think that all works. So like, I'm interested to see. And Fantastic Four is the movie that I'm most excited for coming up. What is interesting though, outside of this, I think so we have this movie's now. Guardians of the Galaxy is in May, so that's not too far away, and that's a movie that I think is going to be awesome as well. I'm really looking forward to that. But then, did you see they then pushed the Marvels movie all the way back to November? And I'll be honest, like, am I super excited about the Marvels movie? Not as much, at least yet, until maybe some stuff comes out that gets me excited. So it's like after Guardians, I feel like we got a long way to go for another movie to get excited about.
Yeah, I agree. The only other movie, it's a DC movie, is The Flash. I'm excited
Well,
for
yeah,
that.
and I definitely wanted to talk about
So
that before we end it too.
this will have at least 3 good movies. So you already had Ant-Man. You're gonna have Flash, and then Guardians will be pretty good this year, and then won't be much, I don't think, in the
Well,
winter
there's
time.
also if we're going outside the MCU, the Across the Spider-Verse I think has potential because the Into
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah.
Spider-Verse was great.
So there's plenty to watch, but I think by the end of the year there won't be as much on the docket.
Yeah.
At that point, the Marvels aren't something I'm looking forward to. But one of the things I talked about on the podcast from Friday, from a couple days ago, when we reviewed, is that there's a few little problems with Ant-Man. The MODOK thing bothered me. Some minor things here and there, but overall, fun movie.
Exactly.
But
Yeah, it's not perfect. It's not the best MCU movie. The little things that bother you are irrelevant for what I was looking for in this movie.
But think about, so Ant-Man was able to defeat Doom, or excuse
Or
me,
Kang.
Kang. And he's supposed to be the person, right? Unless it's the Beyonder, unless it's Doom, unless it's Galactus. We don't know, right? We're speculating here, or having thoughts. We don't like to use the word speculation. But if Ant-Man can beat Kang, my thought is that, okay, he's not powerful enough. But you're going to need some powerful beings, because whatever's coming down the pipe is going to be pretty intense.
But also,
So
you're going to be
who's
fighting thousands of Kangs, not just the
okay,
one
so you
Kang.
are, but you need powerful beings. You can't have a bunch of Hawkeyes
Yeah.
or Daredevils. She-Hulk, like I said, she's not beaten much of anything, in my opinion, in the way she was in her TV show. Now she may grow, so you need the Fantastic Four. You probably need Silver Surfer. You need Captain Marvel, right? You're not going to have Ms. Marvel. You're going to need Captain Marvel or Photon. You're going to need Adam Warlock from Guardians. You're going to need Nova. So all these next couple movies better bring in some bigger names to be beating up these bigger villains coming down the pipe, because most of the people out there are street level, and only one of them, Spider-Man, through the symbiote, is able to fight universally, we'll call it, or in the
Yeah,
multiverse.
I mean, I could see I could see there being multiple. So like through the first 3 phases, right? It was kind of one road, right? It all led through to the Infinity Saga. I could see them, especially like, whether or not you like it or not, like Disney bought Marvel not with the extent to like come to a finishing point, right? Disney has plans to make Marvel movies because they are all doing super well. For the most part, they all do super well. They're going to be making Marvel movies for the next several decades potentially, right? Like it's not like they didn't stop making Mickey Mouse content. They didn't stop making all
Right.
these Disney products, right? They're not going to stop making Star Wars movies, right? They're going to keep because it makes money for them, right? So I think as it continues to go down the line, they have to create different road maps, or not road maps, but different paths. And so, like, when I think of like how does Daredevil tie into like Secret Wars and Kang Dynasty, I don't think he does. Like, I
Right.
think there's
Maybe.
going to be a whole like street level side of the MCU, and that's going to be your Daredevil, and and maybe like Spider-Man is a character that can kind of play between both of those, right? Like Spider-Man's going to be in Secret Wars, but he's also going to be in Daredevil, right? He's the character that kind of bridges the gap, and often, one of the characters that can bridge the gap between the two. But I think like you're exactly right. Like, I mean, Daredevil is not going to do anything to Kang, right?
Right.
But Daredevil can fight Kingpin, and I'm going to
Yeah.
like that.
And there you got your
And
street level people, and like DC, the James Gunn universe is going to have what they call it. They have the I'm going to call it the DGU, the gun universe, right? So the
yeah,
DCGU, excuse me, and then there's going to be the, what do you call it? The extended universe, or the
Elseworlds.
Elseworlds, which you can tell stories like the Batman, the Penguin,
No, the
the
joke. Oh yeah,
Joker.
yeah.
That has no bearing on whatever the storyline, the universe he's creating. So you can do the same thing with Marvel and do your street level people that have no bearing. And again, you could do universal or cosmic characters that have no bearing, but you got to start establishing, at least in my opinion, these bigger
To
characters
fight
that
Kang,
can
yes,
fight
I agree.
someone as big as Kang. Because I'm fine to watch Daredevil fight Kingpin. That would be a draw for me in a movie, let alone a TV series. I would watch Kingpin fight Punisher, and Punisher fight Spider-Man. Like, all that can be great movies or series on Disney Plus. But what we're building towards now is like, you got to
Yeah,
start bringing some people, in my opinion,
you know,
because that's
like I said, so you have your street level path that we talked about. There's gonna be Daredevil, there's gonna be Punisher, Spider-Man would jump in there. You got Kingpin, Bullseye, Elektra, like a lot those characters, right? You can even if they want to bring back Luke Cage and Iron Fist and try and redo those characters, right? Then we've got our main storyline, which is the King thing, and I think like with Guardians coming up, it's been very well put out there that this is the last iteration of this Guardians team. I don't think that means that necessarily this is the last Guardians movie because there is a comic run where Adam Warlock becomes the leader of the next or an iteration of the Guardians. So I could see the next team of the Guardians being Adam Warlock, Nova, because they've already talked about the Nova Corps, right? And then they could obviously then tie that in with Silver Surfer, cosmic stuff, and that these people can fight. Yes, Darkhawk, and then that goes down this Kang path, Secret Wars pathway, and then I think like there's also a potential for a third pathway, which is where they had the Werewolf by Night, and so you have kind of the darker monster kind of thing. You can have Werewolf by Night, you can have Ghost Rider, you can have Man Thing, and all of these various Legion of Monsters type side. Because like I said, like they're going to keep making content for a while. It can't always flow together. They're going to have to branch out, and I just think these are kind of various pathways they can do that.
Yeah, and I think tying it all together, I find it that it was a monumental task to get all of those movies to align to the end and bring them all back. To do that twice is possible, but to be the overarching goal of the Marvel Cinematic Universe probably isn't correct, and you're probably right that.
And I think too, like if they're going to keep doing this for decades, it makes more sense to have separation, right? Because if we have to think of every movie in terms of the greater landscape of the MCU, there's going to be constant disappointment, right? So we have to have separate branch ways that are like, okay, no, this is its own thing, and they're going on, they're doing this at the street level. This is their own
you're
thing.
You're going to have to change people's ideas to realize that they don't all connect.
Yeah, because I mean, you got to think about it, right? Like, there's going to be new fans coming to the MCU every year, right? Kids get older, they start watching these movies. New kids are born, and they get older, they start watching. At some point, you've got to create a universe where I don't have to watch the 62 previous movies to know what's going on in this movie, right? You've got to establish new storylines.
Well, that's what Stan Lee always wanted to do, is that when you have to read previous storylines to know. That's why they always had little notes in all the books that I did used to read as a kid to tell me what the hell most of that stuff meant.
Yeah.
Right? Because Dan Lee didn't want you to have to go back and buy all that. I'm sure he did, but he didn't want you to feel lost by picking up that first book. Because everybody today's your first
comics, so you can't necessarily do that in the movies, though.
But you can have those quick little, like in Antman, when Janet, like, she looks back to when Kang showed up, right? You can do a quick little epilogue with that, and bring in a flashback to Scott. Oh, that's how that came about, and not have to do a whole origin story.
No, I get it, but like think about like 15, 20 years from now when they're still making Marvel movies.
Oh yeah,
right. They're not going to be like, so you remember when there was the blip? This is how so and so wasn't mentioned in the blip. Like they're going to have. It's going to have to. The garden is going to need to grow, right?
There's going to be some way to reestablish the universe in a different way. Yeah. At some point, it's not going to be completely going connected forward, and again, they really didn't have interactions until Secret Wars anyway in comics, a few here and there, and then they went back on their separate ways, and people rewrite.
Yeah, like in the 90s when you and I grew up reading comics, it was like the X-Men were over here doing things, the Avengers were over there doing things, and the Fantastic Four was over here, and they had interplay issues, of course, and those were awesome, but like they oftentimes were just kind of doing their different things, saving the universe every time.
Yeah. So we'll see. I this movie, to go back to Antman, gave me a lot of hope for what that may look like in the future, like we're just talking about. Thor: Love and Thunder did not. Multiverse did. So I'm happy I was happy. I enjoyed this movie for that part of it, and looking forward to what's coming back. And then you can, as we say, what are they going to do in the future, and speculate, talk about that. But really, you got to enjoy the moment too, right? Where you're going on this ride, because they may not make any Marvel movies after this. These movies might bomb, and just like the 2000s, that, I mean, they still made movies, but it didn't move comics. It wasn't pulp culture as much as it is now. So
yeah,
I think thankful that we're not looked at as too big of nerds, because we watch this stuff, and millions of people do every time a movie comes out for now.
Yeah.
And it could go anywhere or crash, and to be happy with what we're getting to see now, and I think it'll be a completely different world after Secret Wars.
Yeah. I don't think. I mean, I've heard a lot of people, especially leading up to this movie, were like, "Oh, I have Marvel fatigue," and I think that's probably because of Phase 4 and its kind of content that it had. But I mean, it's like I'm 100% down to watch Marvel movies for the rest of my life. I'm not gonna lie. Like, as long as they're great and fun, I don't care. Like, I'll keep watching Spider-Man. I'll keep watching the X-Men. I'll keep watching Fantastic Four. I'll keep watching the Avengers. Right? I mean, hell, comic books have been around since the 50s, right? And they're still going, making new stories and things like that. Like, I don't have any issue with this being any different.
No, and I mean, there's so much content that, again, I didn't watch Game of Thrones. This is unrelated to this universe until the pandemic, and that was out in 2011.
Yeah, maybe I can't remember, but maybe even before. But yeah,
they finished in 2018, so I watched it 3 years later. I just finished the first 2 seasons of Daredevil.
yeah,
I just finished the first season of Titans. So like, because it's available and we stream these and we have a subscription, go back and watch them.
yeah.
Right? Titans is really cool. I've been watching that. It's the CGI is nowhere near as good as what it is now, but that was a series, right? That's where that Marvel lacks CGI work in their Disney Plus shows because the budgets, whereas the movies don't. So you got to take it for what it is.
Oh, actually that brings up a good point. As you said, the Marvel shows at the second post-credit scene, even though it was like, again, my biggest complaint with the shows is they just never matter in the grand scheme of things, and they never. To me, it's like they never go all in. Like, okay, we're gonna do the show, we're gonna have it mean something. It's like always just some like tertiary characters with some tertiary villains, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You don't need to watch that. Like, you don't need to watch Moon Knight to know what's going on in this movie. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But the one show I did like was Loki, and this movie tied in with Loki at the very end with that post-credit scene. So I was like, finally we had some congruence with a show and a movie and the greater universe. And upcoming Loki season 2 will have Kang in it, so I think that's kind of cool.
And this was Mobius, his
first Mobius appearance. Right? Yeah.
So, and he played so well by Will from was it Owen Wilson?
Owen Wilson, yeah. I always forget Owen Wilson.
And his brother's Luke, but that second, that Victor Timely is the name of the guy that he's playing in that, and that has some, goes back to another Kang story and how that will work into who that will be. So that was both post-credit scenes really helped out the Loki and the future of MCU, because Loki will be part of it, Deadpool will be part of it. So it's got me excited for Loki when that does come out to see how that plays, because I don't know which Kang is going to be the main baddie. I have an idea, like I mentioned earlier, but we'll see. But they got a lot of options, and they're setting the groundwork for go any which way. But that Loki's way different because it has much more implications on the Secret Wars, whereas I guess WandaVision did too, but the rest of them,
the rest of them were irrelevant as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. So
real quick before we close out, do you have any thoughts on that Flash trailer, or did I cut you off? You were going to say something?
No, I'm good.
Any thoughts on the Flash trailer?
I'm excited for it. I said this earlier that this was going to be how they're going to use Flashpoint to reset it and start the universe over again. And I said this, I don't know how long ago, so I'm not taking credit for it, but this is looking like how they're going to reset the DC EU to be the DCGU, and I think that's that's going to be a way cool story. I hope to hell that Aquaman has no bearing, and that that just Aquaman folds into Flash somehow and ends Aquaman and Jason Momoa's Aquaman. Because I never liked those shows. I don't know why the hell Aquaman made $1 billion. To me, it was a good movie, but not that big of a movie. But this Flash looks like it could do really well, and it's gonna be a great way to sort of cut and start over in a fun way.
Yeah, it definitely looks. It definitely looks fun, and I've also heard that, like, in a potential post-credit scene, that they'll. So I guess, like, people really love. I never watched the Flash TV show, but the actor is Grant Gustafson, I think his name is, and I've heard a rumor about, like, how they made a post-credit scene to introduce him as the new ongoing Flash, because they're obviously going to dump Ezra Miller because he's a train wreck of a human. And that's the thing. Like, what's interesting is like it puts Warner Brothers in an interesting position because let's just say Flash comes out and it's a huge hit,
Right.
and it's like
It's gonna be.
right, yeah, it very well might, like, especially because with Michael Keaton as Batman. But like I've heard so many people come out and say like, okay, I'm gonna watch this movie, but if James Gunn chooses to continue on with Ezra Miller, I don't care how good anything is, I'm out. Like that's how like reviled this human is. So I've heard that they've made, um, again, who knows if it's true, but like that Grant Gustafson will be
I heard
instantly.
that a while ago. Whenever Ezra was having troubles, I said when they were talking about refilming or reshooting the movie and then bringing Grant in and redoing it, but they were too far along to do that. And I said,
Yeah.
well, just make him the next Flash. Like have this Flash die and do the multiverse or something, like they've hinted about before. Because I had heard that there was going to be a couple Batmans in it, and I'm like, okay, great, you can just go with that storyline. And it looks like they're going to. The Grant thing would be really cool moving forward if they're going to use him, but you need James Gunn to give that okay.
Yeah.
Whereas they might just kill off the Flash and find somebody else down the road, right?
Yeah.
Who knows? But I think this is going to end the old universe and begin the new one, and that's what I'm excited about of how they put that together. Because I think it's, and again, it maybe it disappoints in a sense, but I think I didn't think Thor: Love and Thunder would disappoint, and it did.
Yeah.
So I hope this one doesn't, because there are some way cool things they could do with who I see is on in the movie and who could be in it and how they could reset things. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely looking forward to that one. But again, my question is Shazam sits by itself because he
Who
didn't have any
cares?
real ties.
I didn't even watch
Right.
this damn one.
It was fun. It was fun to watch, but they had Superman in it and just his heads, just his body. So you could say it was any Superman they have going forward,
Yeah.
right? So it didn't tie in. Aquaman kind of did. So after this Flash movie, Shazam is going to come out, and it's not going to, or it comes out before, but it's not going to have a huge bearing because they were never connected. Aquaman is. So how do you have this Flashpoint and end or begin a new universe and have the Aquaman show up in 4 months?
I don't know. When does Flash come out?
Flash comes out in the summer, Shazam's in March, and then Aquaman's the end of the year.
Okay.
So it would have been better if Aquaman came out now, Flash was the end of the year, and then you could reset.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
James Gunn, like I want Lobo, and Jason Momoa. I don't know how you're gonna do that. I'm just
Well,
curious
I
how they.
mean, people talk about that there's going to be an Aquaman 3 with Jason Momoa.
Yeah,
So who knows?
and James Gunn said we're not gonna have anyone play both characters.
Yeah. So your Lobo hopes, man.
They're
They need to
being
find a
dashed,
new
but
dream.
that's what I'm saying. This Aquaman movie doesn't make sense with what I think the Flash movie is gonna happen. So,
Yeah.
but
We shall see.
we shall see. Well, I always enjoy reviewing nerdy movies because that's the only kind of movie to watch.
Yeah.
Except if anyone out there wants to see the movie Otto with Tom Hanks, that was a good movie. I would recommend that.
Otto. Which
Go
one
with
is
your
that?
significant Otto, the man named Otto.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's nothing like Ant-Man,
Yeah.
but if you have a significant other that likes to watch movies like that, it's worth your time. You
All
can
right.
get some brownie points by taking him or her to that movie and
Okay.
enjoying it. So, other than that, there's only other one movie type to watch, and that's superhero movies. So,
There you go.
all
All
right, y'all. We will see you on the next recording. We'll be interviewing who we have on the docket.
Manu from the 9.9 newsstand. I'm really looking forward to this. He's a great guy. He's got a really cool feed. So if you haven't checked out the 9.9 newsstand, check him out. And we'll obviously talk about more about his feed in the upcoming episode. But check it out. He's got some great content on Instagram. That is
great interviews coming up. 9.9 first and
9.9. We got the Geekable podcast guy, and then we got a guy that talked to us about the DCU universe. Yeah, we got a lot of good stuff. We got the Phil from One True Last Nerd King. Yeah, awesome interviews coming up.
So stay tuned.
Yeah. Comment if you like that. Let us know what you thought about Ant-Man.
Yep, definitely. All right, y'all. Have a good rest of your day. Peace out.
Peace.